The long-dormant series of B-movie monster flicks about a small Nevada town that gets terrorized by hideous underground worms, or graboids, finally gets resurrected, as a once-again direct-to-video sequel. With the advent of movies and shows being developed entirely for Netflix and PlayStation, that doesn't necessarily amount to a bad thing. However, given the track record of most horror franchises, let's be honest, home video is where the monster goes to die. While Tremors 2 went straight to video, it was actually an entertaining little flick that carried over the humor and B-movie appeal of its theatrical predecessor. That might have been in due part to the return of Fred Ward, one of the two heroes from Universal's original film. However, for the remainder of the sequels, as well as a short-lived TV show, series veteran Michael Gross became the lead as gun enthusiast Burt Gummer, and this, along with incredibly cheesy special effects, might have been the franchise's downfall. Tremors 3 and 4, a sequel and prequel respectively, while having their share of mildly amusing scenes, fell flat in the story and effects departments. Gummer's overconfident, gun-wielding soldier character was great as comic relief, but he never really worked as the main character. For this fifth installment, set almost 2 decades later, not much has changed. Gummer is as buoyant and selfless as ever, a one-man army and graboid expert trying to relive his glory days. The film starts with Gummer starring in his own reality TV series, and yet he's still hunting the creatures in the desert town of perfection. About 30 seconds in, we're introduced to this movie's sidekick, Travis Welker, played by another aging screen veteran, Jamie Kennedy. Kennedy's a leather coat-wearing, motorcycle-riding show-off, who also claims to be Gummer's biggest fan, offering his services as Burt's new videographer. Does the setup sound familiar? One need only to refer back to the twist in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull to figure out the play on words offered by the film's title. The majority of the action takes place in South Africa, surprisingly, where a new breed of graboid has been attacking the villagers. You would think this is where the film truly heats up, and it does, about an hour in. Disappointingly, we hardly ever get to see the creatures, and when we do, it's in such short bursts that we desperately want to reach for that rewind button to see what we just missed. This is the biggest failure of low-budget horror films, cheapening the film by relying on suspense over creature effects. It worked for Jaws, but most films can't pull this off. And sometimes, with these kinds of hokey B-movie creature features, part of the thrill is actually seeing the monster. You'll also be disappointed to find out that, like the last 3 sequels, there's an overabundance of CGI. To the film's credit, given the design of the monsters, it would have been near impossible to pull these off practically, but it would have still been nice to see a couple of life-sized graboids right there in front of the lens. Now for the positives. First off, South Africa makes for a welcome and much-needed change to the desolate desert town environment. It gives the film a sense of visual depth that sometimes makes you forget the minuscule budget. I also have to hand it to director Don Michael Paul, as this is hands down one of the more interesting entries to look at. Even though there are seldom any graboids on screen, the off-camera action is nicely shot. As far as the creatures go, most of which are just mutated ass blasters from the third film, the CGI doesn't look half bad. It isn't perfect, and a lot of the time they're hidden in darkness, but from what we see, the models are fairly detailed, and they get the job done. It has to be said that there are a few obvious nods to the Jurassic Park series, the cafeteria scene in particular, right down to the close-up of the creature's claw on the metal surface. This is a Universal production, so they're allowed, but come on. It takes guts to put this film in the same league as the mega-hit franchise that Spielberg hatched into existence. All in all, I'm glad I checked it out. However, I can only recommend this if you're a hardcore fan of the series, mostly because it moves pretty slowly. It's better than the last 2 films, I'll give it that, but unless they bring in some more interesting lead characters, this should really be where the buck stops.